Our world leaders have gathered in Rome to discuss sustainable global development. But almost 2 years into the coronavirus pandemic, one of the major themes of this summit turned out to be vaccine access. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi pushed for the so-called TRIPS waiver, which seeks an intellectual property rights waiver among G20 countries for COVID-19 vaccines and medical supplies. The Indian Prime Minister raised the issue at the session titled Global Economy, Global Health. India has advocated for the tech transfer and diversification of vaccine supply chains for a long time. New Delhi has said that it will continue its push for affordable access to COVID-19 disease control tools.
Prime Minister highlighted India's contribution in the fight against the pandemic. He mentioned India's medical supply to over 150 countries. He spoke about our vision of One Earth, One Health, which is essentially the need for a collaborative approach in the international domain in the fight against the corona pandemic. I'm talking about collaboration from R&D, research, to collaboration in actually combating pandemics, collaboration across the board in developing mechanisms that can cope with future pandemics and future global health issues.
In his opening remarks, Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi emphasized that 70% of the global population must be vaccinated against COVID-19 by mid-2022. Draghi also noted that while more than 70% of people in developed countries have received at least one dose of the vaccine, in contrast, that percentage drops to around 3% in the poorest parts of the world. The Italian Premier also drew attention to the dwindling vaccine supply in developing nations, calling for improvement in access to essential medical equipment and setting up production units in developing nations. Listen in.
In high-income countries, more than 70% of the population has received at least one dose. In the poorest ones, this percentage drops to roughly 3%. These differences are morally unacceptable and undermine the global recovery. We are close to meeting the WHO's target of vaccinating 40% of the global population by the end of 2021. Now, we must do all we can to reach 70% by mid-2022.
While addressing the Group of 20 summit of world leaders virtually, Russian President Vladimir Putin called on members to accept each other's vaccine certificates. Putin also stressed on the need to develop mechanisms for systematic and swift renewal of vaccines.
We propose tasking the health ministries of the G20 states to swiftly work on the mutual recognition of vaccine certificates. Experts say the coronavirus will pose a threat for a long time. I think the WHO representatives will speak more on this, but given that the virus will continue to mutate, we should develop mechanisms for a systemic and swift renewal of vaccines.
India's impetus for the so-called TRIPS waiver comes amid vaccinations being recognized as a global public good by G20 nations, and Draghi's comments signal support for India's cause. Besides this, one of New Delhi's key concerns remains the WHO's approval of Covaxin, India's first indigenous COVID-19 vaccine, which has already been administered to millions of Indians and exported to various nations under Operation Vaccine Maitri. Now, Covaxin is yet to be approved by the World Health Organization.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.